We have Frank Rollason, our director. Nixsa Serrano is our operations bureau manager. And our operations section chief during activation. So if you guys want to go ahead and speak briefly about yourself and how you got here and all that stuff.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Yadi mentioned, my name is Nixsa Serrano. I'm the operations bureau manager day to day. So I manage the areas that are involved with sheltering, evacuation, logistics, special needs, all the fun areas. And then when we activate, I'm in charge of the operations room, the operations section chief. I also handle several of the systems that we utilize for alert notifications, such as our Everbridge system and my Miami-Dade alerts. And then the person who is in charge of the administrator for the WebEOC also reports to me. So that's the system that we use here in the EOC to manage an incident. So that's basically what I do day to day.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Frank. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the county. I've been here, I guess, going on 3 years. Time is flying, isn't it? So, I have the overall responsibility for the operations here, everything dealing with the emergency management division. We're in the fire department, which I think is a good fit. It gives us a lot of depth when we need personnel for a myriad of different things. Our staff is, what do we have, 27, about 24 people? 26? I mean, we got some part-time people, so it comes and goes, but that low number range. And so when we really need a lot of staff to do things like at the warehouse or deployments, then the fire department provides those needs for us. I interface with elected officials when we're activated. The mayor, we have a strong mayor form of government here in Dade County. So the mayor is the incident commander, and I interface with the mayor in the meetings that we have and supplying the information that he or she now, we have a new mayor, a lady, Danielle Cava, and so to provide them the information that they need to make the decisions that have to be made, whether we're going to evacuate a certain area, shelter in place, those types of things, the practices and so forth to go on. So that's basically what my mission is here. Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and get, well, I guess, Nixsa, if you can talk a little bit about,
I'll talk about the EOC.
yeah, how we got here.
Why don't we do this? Are they able to hear okay with these fans down?
Yes. They said that they were, yeah, because I asked that, yeah.
No, excuse me. Now that they are talking and the masks, it gets difficult to listen to them.
Is the main operations floor, and we operate under an incident management system where it's a hybrid of ICS as well as ICS and functional groups. So, are they able to see?
Yep.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And in the operations floor, we have
excuse me. Could you turn the camera sideways, please? Yeah, Harissa.
With the public safety issues. So the lead agencies, for example, for firefighting, which would be the fire department, for hazardous materials incidents, which is ESF 8, ESF 10, and then ESF 16, which is the law enforcement folks.
Yeah.
So those functional groups that are similar functions,
could you please turn the camera?
Under the public safety branch. In the middle section, we have the human services branch, and those emergency support functions, or what are called ESF, are banded together that deal with health and human services issues. So we have lead agencies such as the health department that deal with health and medical issues. We have the Red Cross that supports the sheltering issues, United Way, as well as Community Action Human Services Department.
If you can hear me, can you please turn the camera?
Yeah, Harissa.
We are trying to. They can hear us.
Listening.
Oh, they can't hear us. Okay.
They can hear us.
Sorry. I may have to, I don't know.
I'm trying to
We have those agencies that deal with transportation. So the ESF, two. We have the Public Works Department. We have FPL, Solid Waste, Public Works, and all those agencies that deal with the day-to-day infrastructure issues of the county.
Yeah, Haritza.
We also have the seaport and the airport, but they didn't kind of fit. We kind of ran out of room, so they example, the larger municipalities such as Miami Beach, City of Miami, Hialeah, Coral Gables, etc., are the divisionals, and the smaller municipalities that they normally work with day to day work. FIUs are kind of our liaisons.
I'm not muted. They're saying that I'm muted, but I'm not muted.
Yeah,
Something happened. I think maybe it was when a call was coming in or something. It blocked out your audio. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, Hiritsa, could you please, is it possible to turn off the fans? Because with the masks, it's very hard to hear what they are saying.
Can you hear us now?
Yes,
We
I
were
can hear.
muted.
Yeah, no, I can hear you well, Hiritsa, now. But is it possible to turn off the fans? Because with the
Is
masks.
someone talking?
Yes, this is Elizabeth, and I'm talking to you. Can you hear me?
Okay, they can. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, could you please turn off the fans?
What was the last thing you heard?
It's hard to tell.
Not much.
Can you go back to when you...
What was the last thing you heard?
Could you please go back?
You're talking about solid waste, public works, and transportation divisions.
They can't hear us, so they can only see what's being typed.
Just start like from the municipal branch.
Okay. So as I was mentioning, the last branch is municipal branch. And since we have 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade County, we don't have them all here, but we've organized them in a way that we can manage the span of control and have effective communication with the municipalities. So there's 8 divisional EOCs. There's smaller municipalities that report to the larger divisional EOCs, and they provide information, feed it up to the divisionals, who will then in turn provide it to the operations section and to me. Miami Beach, since they have to evacuate during any incident, they don't have anyone that reports to them. And we also have a representative here from FIU, because Monroe County, when they evacuate, their special needs population are sheltered at FIU. So we have several different things to facilitate the flow of information and provide situational awareness to everyone that's on the operations floor. So for example, we have those status boards. So those status boards are put on, right now they're on a presentation, but we normally would have different things displayed for the different branches. So for example, on the Human Services branch, we would have information related to shelter openings, if there's any issues with hospitals, if there's distribution of food and water, and those types of things would be displayed. In the public safety, we would have information related to any curfews that are in effect, as well as information on road closures and any evacuation issues that would be occurring. In the infrastructure status board, we would provide information related to issues in the county for the infrastructure, how many people are without power, whether transit is on regular schedule or modified schedule, whether there's any issues at the airport, seaport, whether the parks and marinas and that sort of thing are operational, and any issues with drawbridges that we might be experiencing. So that flow of information, as I mentioned, flows up to the operations section chief, and basically myself or the other operations section chief would be gathering the information, compiling it, and sending it to the planning section. The planning section then develops the incident action plan. The incident action plan is the operational plan that outlines what our goals and objectives are in mitigating the effects of the disaster and or just responding to the effects of the disaster or event. Then to my left, if you can point over to where the policy group is.
We'll walk over there.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we have several different things aside from the status boards that provide situational awareness to the representatives here in the EOC. So these are some of our GIS, Geographic Information System dashboards. And they provided just a very concise summary, something that you can easily look up and get some vital statistics on what we're experiencing, what we're dealing with. We change them up depending on what incident we're working with. So for example, right now you're looking at a coronavirus COVID dashboard with the latest data. And here we would have, for example, we have the Florida Florida Department of Health information. But when we're activated for hurricanes, we would put information such as the shelters that are open, the evacuation routes that are in place, the status of different items that we're monitoring. So in addition to the operations floor and the main branches, we have the GIS unit, which is part of planning, and I'm going to be walking us over to planning. GIS unit plays a very critical role for us. It's supported by the county's information technology department, and they provide mapping needs for us and items that we are able to analyze so that we can make decisions on effectively mobilizing resources that are needed. So in the beginning, for example, pre-event, specifically for hurricanes, they would be using the slosh modeling, cutting out the areas that we would need to evacuate based on the information that we're getting from the National Hurricane Center, plotting that information and giving us data in regards to estimated populations in the area, which then we utilize to make decisions on how many shelters need to be open, et cetera. And again, this particular unit reports to the planning section. So the next section over here is the planning section. And as I mentioned, they develop the incident action plan for the overall event. And they also develop the situation report. So all this information, all the representatives here, once the incident action plan is put out with our goals and objectives and what tasks need to be undertaken, which agencies are undertaking them, that information gets compiled by each of the branch directors for their specific branch, funneled up to the operations section, who then turns that over to the planning section, who develops the overall situation report for the county and updates the incident action plan accordingly every day in regards to what our current objectives are. So this is the planning section, and as you can see on the whiteboard, we have the current situation, and we have the objectives on the right-hand side. And then they also participate on a variety of conference calls to continue to obtain the latest information regarding the situation that we're dealing with. So they'll be in constant communication, daily calls with the National Weather Service, the State Division of Emergency Management, and others as needed.
Does anyone have any questions so far? No questions? All right.
Okay. We'll just walk in front of the press room so I can get
Okay.
So as I mentioned, that first row here in the back is the divisional EOCs. Also a representative from FIU, as well as the Florida Division of Emergency Management. In the back row here, we have a representative of FEMA. If they choose to send one, they would have a spot here, as well as a spot for a neighboring county, for our county, and just some technical support seats. Walking you over now to the area that's at the press room.
We'll walk them in.
We'll walk them in.
Yeah, let's go to the mayor's room so we can show them. I do have a question here real quick. Is all that on top of a raised flooring system?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, all the wiring is on a raised floor, and there's some that are above as well. So some of the audiovisual improvements that we've made over the last several years are also above head. But it is a raised flooring here as well as the other conference rooms.
Did you explain to them about these dividers and the fans?
That someone just asked that, so.
That's later?
No, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so as Frank mentioned,
Well, because of the COVID, we had these built. Our staff here at the fire department made these dividers. And, you know, obviously to try to stop the spread when we have to have a lot of people on site.
That's okay.
And then we installed these hydroxyl generator fans with the UV light that we leave on all the time, even though it's a drone that you have to sort of get used to when you're in here. But when they're on, they have a color, you know, UV light is in there, and any of the virus that passes through that light, they will kill it instantly. The other thing we've done is we've developed a virtual EOC so that we don't have to bring the people in here. And we're able to connect with a lot of our partners and our municipalities virtually. And when we're up, they're online where they are. And so far, fortunately, knock on wood, we didn't have a hit this year with the hurricanes on top of having the COVID, which is going to give us a lot of other challenges with sheltering for sure.
And we've had the opportunity to test it, fortunately, with a hurricane that didn't impact us, but we were able to at least effectively demonstrate that we were able to carry out those functions virtually and here. So each of the branches has like a channel, a group that they speak to. I'm able to conduct an overall briefing with all the representatives. Additionally, we also make sure that they're logged into WebEOC. So one of the things that we've also done is in WebEOC itself, anybody who is not physically here and is working remotely, they log into but are still on shift, they would log in, show that they're on shift. That way we're able to facilitate the communication, whether you're here or you're somewhere else. You know who you need to call if you need to reach, for example, the MDPD rep or the solid waste representative is on call on that particular day. And then in fact, we are going to be also kind of testing it again when we have our nuclear PowerPoint exercise. I know I mentioned a lot of things that we do during hurricanes, but one of the things that we always do annually is we test our plan in relation to the nuclear power plant. And every other year, that plan is tested and we're evaluated by a FEMA group. So it happens that this upcoming year, 2021, it's going to be an evaluated draw. So because of all the challenges related to COVID and the pandemic, I think a lot of other groups are also moving towards having virtual exercises and testing it. And I think we're kind of fortunate that we started that a little bit early on, have tested it on a couple occasions. Of course, there's always room for improvement, and we continue to move in that area in terms of improving that communication, you know, and just basically rectifying any challenges technically that we can rectify.
Okay. Now, if you want to take a shot over here at the wall with the black screen in it, that just shows us, you know, that wall that we have there, that visual wall, is many years old. And we can see have one panel that's black, another one is flickering. And we have, the technology has gone past what we have. We converted it this past year to digital because it wasn't on a digital system, but now the panels themselves have to be replaced, and so that's in the
works.
It's in the works now, and we'll have that done before we have the next hurricane season, we'll have that redone.
And then I have here two questions. So how do we deal with the noise of the fans during an event?
Well, I have a button there that I can put on a loudspeaker, overhead speaker. So that's normally what I would do, is when I have to make announcements or briefings to the floor, I augment the sound and turn on that overhead speaker.
Right, and also one of the benefits of these panels is after we had some people in here doing a call down for some activities that we were doing to update our registry, they mentioned how it was better and it was quieter in there with them when they were within these panels.
Because they're in their little, yeah.
Because in that little area blocks some of the sound. The other thing that's good about the way we have this set up is when they wheel the chair back sitting in it, they still have a separation here between them. Whereas a lot of places, or you'll go into, you'll see that they stop the dividers at the edge of the desk. So when the people are sitting here, they're still communicating with each other, you know, breathing wise and so forth. So at least here when they have to talk, they have to at least swing back this far. They got a good separation.
And I asked the question incorrectly when they asked about the noise, not about the fans. Just whenever we have the room full of all the reps.
Oh, well, one of the things that we do have in place to kind of mitigate some of the noise level is there's headsets at each of the telephones. So we encourage them to use that headset so that minimize the noise within each of, you know, that spreads throughout the room. And actually, while you're showing that, one of the, just to talk a little bit about the redundancies that we have in the operations center. Every other station, like if you could show them the red phone, has this red phone, which is an analog phone. It goes back to the control office at down the street, and if communications go down phone-wise, at least every other seat here has that phone, and we're able to continue communications outward. We did actually have an event a couple years back where that occurred for a couple hours, and then people were still able to make calls out and communicate. We also have redundancies in terms of a generator here in the building. So typically when we go into lockdown mode, or just prior to going into lockdown mode, the generator's turned on. We're operating fully on generator power. We have we also have UPS systems. They won't keep the computers on indefinitely or for a long period of time, but at least for a short enough period of time until the situation is mitigated or corrected, whatever is causing a particular outage.
Yeah, the other thing that you should be aware of, or I want to make you aware of, is that this sort of looks like it's pretty big, but we really...
I'm seeing someone else's screen. Can you guys still see us?
Okay.
Can you guys see us?
Yes, now.
There's some construction that has to take place. It's a Category 5 building that the county already owns. And right now, Police 911 and Police Dispatch are in that building, along with our 311 dispatch is in that building. But they're going to build another ancillary building to it with a large parking garage, because parking is a problem there. And it will also have space that's Category 5 for other uses. And there'll be a connection between the two buildings at a higher level where you can walk across and still have traffic go underneath. Because this has just gotten too small for us with all the activities that we have. We had a big exercise here the Coast Guard did last year.
Operation Vigilance Center.
Yeah, for one of the
So it was a federal exercise that they actually have all the time. We had hosted it in the past, and they asked us to host it. And this time I think they actually probably got more than what they had in past years.
Right.
So we were able to accommodate them, help them test their plan, and also have us involved in testing any support that we might be able to lend to any type of federal response that might be needed in our backyard per se.
But that was a mass migration drill that they did, and it pointed out to us with the Coast Guard in here and the Border Patrol in here, if we were to have an event that is not hurricane related, but let's say we do have a terrorist event of some type that's of a large magnitude, and we have the FBI in here, and we have the military in here, and we have us in here, and we have the police in here, it's going to get to where it's not really functional for what we need to do. So we're having to move to another site, and also one of the features that we will have is a continuation of government facility that won't just be for a few days, but if something were to happen here, to where something happens at the Stephen P. Clark building and we can't re-enter that building, maybe ever, if it's anthrax or something, you know, terrorism type things that we have to think about. Where does government continue? Where does government operate from on a long-term basis until either another building can be built or the building that has been damaged can be, repaired? We have to think that way in today's world, that it's just not about natural disasters, but man-made disasters.
And then going back to the virtual EOC topic, the people working remotely, are they in hurricane-safe facilities?
The county, let's talk about Florida Power and Light when we talk about hurricanes. Florida Power and Light is one of our key partners, obviously. That's the big deal after a storm, is getting power back up. And we've got them hooked in. They are in their facility on Lejeune Road and Flagler, which is, their EOC is underground in that building. They go 2 stories underground. And we've got them hooked into what we call the hard ring of the county for the Wi-Fi or for the internet. So if the Wi-Fi goes down, we are hardwired to the NAP, the network access point, which is downtown Miami, which is a direct connection into the internet. The internet runs through the NAP. And we are wired to that. And a lot of our county buildings are hardwired to that. And now Florida Power and Light is hardwired to that. And this year on our plan, we want to get the divisional EOCs that are within that parameter of that hard wiring throughout the county. We want to get them connected into that too. So, we try to have the redundancy that we need. This particular building, we have 2 feeds from Florida Power and Light. The new building will have 2 feeds, but they'll come from 2 separate stations rather than from the same station. So, you make it as redundant as you can to try to stay up.
And how many people approximately fit in this room?
Well, in the main operations floors, we have like about 75 spots. And then the rooms around, the conference rooms, such as planning section, the logistics. So all in total for activation level 1, it could be anywhere upwards of 150 people.
And what happens, people come and they bring somebody with them. And so then you have a chair behind a chair, which is, we're allowing for that in the new facility. And then you have the change of shift when you go from the Alpha to the Bravo, and the people have a time where they brief the other team that's coming in. So then you have a time where you have almost double the parking. You have to have those people counted for that are coming in and leaving. Both their vehicles are here at the same time. If we're in a condition that we can leave. Once we're locked down for a storm, particularly, then whoever's here is here until it's safe to travel on the roads again. But in a normal Alpha Bravo situation, people are coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning, we're leaving, and then the people at 7 o'clock at night. So you've got double the shift. You got twice the number of people here for that period of time, what, maybe half an hour or so?
Half an hour. We tell them to come in half an hour so
About
they
a
can
half hour.
exchange information regarding.
Right, so they come in a half hour early and then the other people stay a little bit. So sometimes for an hour, you've got double the amount of people here and you have to make, space for that. Sleeping is another consideration. We'll have very adequate dormitories, a male and female dormitory with showers in the new place that can really accommodate a large number of people. Right now, people sleep on the floor, they sleep in their chairs. I mean, where they can find a place, especially when we're locked down. And that's just not conducive to having people, operationally ready. You need to have a place where they can eat, where they can sleep, where they can shower, they can rest. And we will accommodate that in the new facility.
So you spoke a little bit about where we sleep, and we pretty much we ask people to bring their own sleeping bags, cots, etc. And can you speak a little bit about food? How you guys feed us?
Well, we will, once we're activated on a 24-hour basis. We have an on-site kitchen, so we order food for the representatives that are here. So once we get in lockdown, we also let them know, okay, this is how many people will be here through the lockdown period. So there are situations where that lockdown period might be more than 24 hours.
Well,
will be 48, yeah, so it could be up to 48 hours or longer. So they will bring in the the appropriate amount of food for the individuals that are scheduled to be here through lockdown, and that will be provided for them while they're here.
And then someone's asking if the EOC provides emergency shelter for staff and or the public. If so, how does it operate as an emergency shelter? So if you could talk a little bit about.
What do you mean for the public? Well, not for the public, no. So the EOC is just strictly for the representatives that are here that have a role, emergency response role in the county's plans.
And then can you talk a little bit about the emergency centers, evacuation centers, which is for the public?
Yes. Well, the evacuation centers this year, we've had to make some obviously changes and changes in procedures to account for the current pandemic crisis. So some of those changes involved ensuring that we had adequate social distancing. So we had to reevaluate the capacities of the evacuation centers. And if we had to open, we probably would have had to open up more evacuation centers to accommodate for that additional spacing. Additionally, though, we emphasize to the public, and the mayor would obviously tell the public to bring with them their emergency supplies, such as bedding, any special dietary food that they need, masks, etc. We had made contingency plans to provide, for example, PPE for any individual who either forgot to bring it with them or just didn't have it. So that we also made sure that we had enough sanitizers, within the facility. And again, we just designated different areas. So part of it would include that when individuals show up, they would be screened. They would be asked some basic screening questions. If they provided any answers that needed further evaluation, then we would have our EMS, our fire folks who would do the additional screening. And then we also would have been taking temperatures at the evacuation centers. If it got down to a point that somebody developed symptoms, for example, when we were in the lockdown mode, we then also identified isolation areas within the evacuation center, so that if an individual and or their family had to be isolated because they displayed symptoms, then they wouldn't expose as much as possible. They wouldn't expose anybody else.
And then how many days of water do we have if on reserve in case of an emergency?
Well,
the schools
themselves have water on site.
And then what about the EOC for us?
Well, we use basically the water fountains. We don't buy specialized water per se. We have the water fountains plus whatever food the vendor, our on-site kitchen staff brings with them.
Water-wise, we do have redundant lines that come into this building. In the event that the line would have happened at one place, we could get water from another source. The issue of contamination is an issue that we would have to contend with, and depending on the type of the emergency, we may have to bring water in. Water is tough to store. It doesn't last long. There's all kinds of issues with having water sitting around in these plastic bottles for long periods of time. It takes up a lot of space and there's a lot of weight. So, but at the schools, they have these inline cisterns that are in the ground, and the water transfers through those underground tanks on a regular basis. The water doesn't go straight from the county to the use of the school like you would when you turn on the fountain. It comes from the cistern. So the fresh water is always going in, and the water that's in there is always being circulated. So we have fresh water. And I think the calculations for like 3 days of water that's in our primary shelters.
And can you talk a little bit about the security capability of this facility during a lockdown?
Well, this is a controlled access facility, so unless unless you have a specific need where you are a representative here, you have to show your ID, and then that'll be checked against a list in terms of which branch or section you would work in. If there's any question, then the security guard knows to contact us, and we would then vet that individual to see if that person needs to be here. But each of the doors has a control access. So for example, I have this badge, and that allows me access into the areas that I need. So access into the administrative offices for my day-to-day function, and access into the EOC for any activation function. So when a representative that has to be working here comes in, they would turn in their license, and then they would get a EOC badge. Looks a little bit different than this, that says EOC on it. And then when they finish their shift, they go back, give their badge, their EOC badge, and get their credentials back.
And then,
and they also, by the way, added measure in terms of making sure, again, that we are trying to limit the exposure to anyone, is they also get screened when they enter the front or the back of the building, so they get their temperature taken. And then once they're cleared, they get a little wristband like the one I have that shows that they've been screened.
And now the school. Same as here, we have police. Besides our private security, there's also police presence here. Again, depending on what the nature of the event is, the police security would be raised or lowered. We don't have it that high for a hurricane, but if we were to have a Turkey Point incident or a terrorist incident, then the police presence would be considerably more.
and then, has the EOC been mobilized to respond to the pandemic? And what role do we play with the mayor's newly announced senior advisor and chief medical officer?
All right, so we have been up at level 2 since March 15th of 2020. We went to level 2 for the COVID. We're at level 2 now. And again, there's nobody in here, but they are active at their homes. They are working away from here. We're up with our people that deal with the health department. The health department is up. Police is up.
And so we have
So we're active now. And then as far as the new chief medical officer that the mayor has put into place, it's just a change from what we had from the previous mayor. The previous mayor had a board of 4 or 5 physicians that were advising him. And this mayor has decided that she wants one individual as a chief medical officer. And so our interface with them deal with our policies and dealing with PPE. They deal with our policies as far as testing that is conducted by the fire department. We're running the test sites throughout the county. The county test sites are run through the fire department. And then we also have a seniors feeding program that's run through the fire department, where we have been feeding seniors since the mayor, the previous mayor, shut down all of the centers, the senior centers, where a lot of them get their primary meal for the day. We've been feeding them at home, And just to give you a little inference on what that is costing in the way of dollars, is we're, I think we're about at the $150 million mark now with the meals that we bring fresh meals to these seniors every day throughout Dade County at their place of residence.
So, and as Frank said, we have been activated the whole time since March 15th. So on a weekly basis, we attend conference calls with the state. I have staff that also participate in meetings related to the health department, our hospitals. In fact, we have 2 going on this week that are very important, just to get an update on the status of hospitals, any challenges they may be incurring, the latest guidance from the Department of Health, and of course, ongoing discussions on the vaccinations that are going to be made available soon.
Right, that's the latest is the vaccination plans that are changing every time we have a meeting. But we're involved in that. We'll be doing vaccinations at some level. But the first tranche that'll come in will be going to the hospitals to vaccinate the medical workers that are dealing with COVID patients or COVID units. And then it'll work its way down. Hopefully by the mid or latter part of 2021, we'll be getting vaccines out to the general public.
And we continue obviously monitoring the amount of testing and the different testing sites that are going on. You know, because sometimes they just change from site to site depending on where the state or the National Guard mobilize them. So we are constantly every day monitoring that and providing information on the amount of testing that's occurring countywide. And as I mentioned, monitoring the amount of ICU beds that are, you know, being in use and any issues that might be occurring in the healthcare field. We also provide and disseminate information that to the long-term care facilities. Most of the time, they're always getting that information from the Agency for Healthcare Administration, which is their regulating agency. But just as a double redundancy, we also share anything that's very critical with them so that they can make sure that they have that information. And as Frank mentioned, in addition to the seniors program, we also coordinate and communicate with the food banks that are in the county and the community, and we update that as much as possible in terms of ongoing feeding that's occurring throughout the community.
We put out a situation report every day that gives a capsule of what's happened at previous 24 hours, of what the status is. There's a myriad of information that's in there. Any orders that are issued by the mayor, any orders issued by the governor, any FEMA directives that come down, they go in this situation report that goes out for official use with all the elected officials and the different agencies throughout the county. And then we've just recently been tasked with preparing the daily dashboard for the COVID numbers. That was being done in the mayor's office with the previous administration. That just got moved over to OEM, emergency management. And we've been doing that for, I guess, since the new mayor came on board in the early part of November. We prepare that daily dashboard that has the numbers. We get numbers from the hospitals, we get numbers from ACA, we get numbers from the fire department. And so the state health department, the local health department of the state, and we put that report together every day. And we also handle a large amount of PPE throughout the county. So that still is monitored throughout the EOC that we're the level 2. So we obtain the PPE from the state, or we purchase it, and we distribute it to the testing sites. We distribute it to the local fire and police departments. We distribute it to the nursing homes, the hospitals, the long-term care facilities, the ALFs. So we've got, there's a big operation going on around the EOC itself, which OEM has a finger in all these things to coordinate and keep track of what exactly is happening.
Yeah, and as Frank said, you know, and especially in the very beginning, it was very challenging because there was a directives being given down from the governor's office like every other day. So we had to stay on top of the latest restrictions, the latest changes, the latest, the mayor would also put his executive orders out. So we had to make sure that we were on top of the latest changes in executive orders for the county as well as mandated by the state. So it's been a fun little roller coaster all year, as Frank mentioned. And maybe between that, we also, we went from, we had been working for the better part of a year on special event planning in relation to the Super Bowl. And it wasn't until maybe a couple weeks after the Super Bowl ended that we rolled into COVID. And then, of course, we also had an activation just monitoring some of the demonstrations that were going on related to the George Floyd incident, and et cetera. Yeah. So we also get reports from our intel on just possible demonstrations or that sort of thing that we keep an eye on and have situational awareness in the event that anything escalates to the point that requires countywide response.
And that's all coordinated through here, because when the mayor, as the incident commander for any type of an event, so if we were to have some civil disturbances, the mayor will come here, will be activated to whatever the appropriate level is. At that particular time, the police department will probably be the lead agency that's involved with that, along with the FBI, depending on what the scale is. They'll have their representatives here, aside from their EOC that they have, which is just police oriented. But here, the coordination takes place. The police are here, the FBI is here, the National Guard is here. Then you have Public Works here. You have those people that they may need to control traffic lights like they did during some of the demonstrations, is the way they kept people from getting into areas that they didn't want this thing to expand into. We were able to control out of here the traffic lights, how they wanted to route traffic, how they wanted to run transportation, that type of thing, so that you can try to keep situations from escalating as it gets into the night. So, if anything happens, man-made or natural, that's not good, then this is where it's coordinated from out of this locale.
So I have several more questions, but let's finish up with the tour, and then we'll take further questions at the end. We're gonna go inside, yeah. So if we can show let's show them the mayor's room, and then we can walk out to the back and go to the.
So this is the mayor's conference room, and this is where basically the policy group meets.
This is the mayor's chair. Nobody ever sits in this chair except the mayor.
Yeah, so she now also has a status board. It's not on right now, but basically the same status boards that are in the EOC would be scrolling through that main screen there. And then they have their special little bat phone, their little red phone as well. And if they wanted to display something, then they would hook it up to the central point here, and they would be able to disseminate that information. So, as I mentioned, this is where the mayor would gather, as well as in the past they had deputy mayors. Now they have chief.
They have chiefs.
Different.
Right. They just changed the title.
Yeah, they're different.
But they meet in here.
So they meet here. In the next room, let me just walk real briefly. The department directors, if they have a specific role where they need to be here, then this is the room that they would be able to work out of.
So what would happen is the mayor would meet in that room with his deputies, and they would start to discuss, what's going on. Sometimes like the National Weather Service would have a representative here, and they would give them a briefing in there. Then the mayor would come in here, and in this policy room, we from OEM would advise them of what we think the next action should be on the plan that we have developed in the planning room. So the planning room comes all the way around, and we're in here. We present to them whether it's going to be evacuations or shelter in place or whatever we're recommending the activities for the next 12 hours are going to take place. That is presented to the mayor and his deputies and the department directors, and they all have input, what their capabilities are, how they see this, how they see that. And then the mayor makes a final decision on what that plan is going to look like. And when that takes place and we've got that solidified, and that's done early in the morning, then it's put together in the final format and it's given to Nixsa, and Nixsa then gives a briefing to everybody out on the floor so that now they know what the plan is for the next 12 hours. So that's the cycle. And then when the next shift comes in, we go through that process again. Now, generally speaking, if we're in a lockdown, there's not, you know, we're riding out the storm. But after that point, there's a different plan that takes place for the next 12 hours. Every 12 hours, there's a plan that's in place. It may be limited more so in the evening than it is during the daytime, especially when you talk about debris removal or that type of thing. But sometimes if you've got a different type of operation, if we've got civil disturbances, then those activities in the night may be of more significance and active than the ones during the day. It just depends on the emergency that you're dealing with.
So then the mayor, once the protective actions are made for the public, she would walk out this way and go into the press room. So we're gonna walk you into the press room. I apologize, it's a little bit dark in this hallway. So one of these rooms here, the Public Information Office, just to give you a quick overview. In this room, they're putting the mayor's message on social media. They're putting it on our website. They're translating it into Spanish and Creole, because all of our public information goes out in English, Spanish, and Creole. And then they're updating the Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade.gov emergency website with all real-time information. So anytime the EOC is activated in response to any type of emergency, that website will have the most current information for the public. And as I mentioned, the mayor's communications team, the fire department, and EOC's communication folks, they would all be working here to ensure that that information is accurately going out to the public. Additionally, they're monitoring what's going on. If you could turn around, there's 8 televisions up there, so they're monitoring the news station. So what happens is sometimes they put information on the crawl for the news stations, and that information changes, and they still have old information in there. So the representatives here, for example, if they see something correct on channel 6 or channel 7, they'll call channel 6 or channel 7 and say, hey, that information is no longer accurate, and then they take that information down. Similarly, if they see something, a lot of chatter from the news on a particular item, then that might give them an inkling, okay, we need to put more information out related to this subject because the public obviously doesn't know. So that coordination goes on.
Let's show on this screen. This screen right here is one of the new things that we added. In fact, we added this wall before this was open, and it made it very difficult for the people in here to really operate and have some privacy, because as the mayor went into the next room to give a press conference, all the staff and everything that follows the mayor around would gather in this area, which made it very difficult. Plus, the people in here were not able to hear or see what the mayor was saying on the other side of the wall. So we put this screen in, and so now the people that are doing the information going out hear exactly the mayor's presentation that he gives on the other side. And then another room here, I just want to show you this for a moment, which is kind of unique for us. So this is a ham radio operator room. And when we have an operation going on, they come in here and they operate and able to get information for us when other systems go down. It's a very valuable tool that we have, that these individuals with their radio club come in, they operate these stations, and they're able to talk all over the state. And they talk with the truckers, and they talk just like you know.
So if we have massive communications going on throughout the county, and we want to say mobilize them to the evacuation centers or other staging areas, we're able to mobilize individuals to those staging areas so that they can get information back to us in a timely manner. They meet here they meet monthly here just to discuss regular things related to the amateur radio operations. And then when we activate, they're brought in as well.
pretty neat feature to have this.
So as I mentioned, the mayor would walk from the mayor's conference room here, and then they'd enter into the press conference room. So anytime that you see the mayor doing a press briefing, it's usually from this room, although there's a room in the Stephen P. Clark Center that's similar to this with the same kind of blue background. They would make the press briefing here, announce to the public recommended actions, and just to show you a little bit of the setup in the room, each of the news stations already have walker boxes that are assigned to them. When we moved in here back in 2000 initially, they were part of, we obtained input from them in terms of things that they needed for this room, and they also even contributed to partially funding the room here. That box over there is for the print media, it provides audio as well. And above here is the pool camera. So basically all the news stations can get the same video and audio from the pool camera that's located up overhead. One of the other features of the room is the windows here are at a slight 30-degree angle, and that's done so that if they want to take a little shot of what's going on in the EOC, they can do so without getting much glare. And then over here, we have just a little setup for if they want to write an article, for example, if they're part of the print news media, and they want to make calls, that they have little workstations here that they can make calls, write their notes, etc.
And
they also,
no, go ahead.
and they also have a monitor here that they can see a dashboard with what's going on.
And do you want to talk about the door that media is only allowed to come in and out, so they're not
Yes.
allowed on the floor?
Yeah, so media is we have a security guard that's stationed at the west entrance of the building. So if they don't provide proper press credentials or proper media credentials, they are not allowed in. Once they do, they are allowed in here. They're not allowed in there unless they're accompanied by a public information officer who can guide them and then make sure that they're not interrupting the operations room, the floor, taking any shots of things that are not ready to be disseminated to the public yet, etc. So this is the west end entrance. And then,
Yeah. Now the other thing is once they're in here, they can't get out of there without going, they can get out through that door without having to have one of these Cantech cards. But once you're in here, you have to have a Cantech card to get out. So you can't come in here and get out into the EOC. And that's important because they will come and just start, meandering around their cameras and talking.
so we actually have a security guard also posted at that end just to make sure, again, that they're not going into the operations floor unaccompanied without a public information officer to guide them, etc. When the mayor's doing their briefing here, there's also somebody who's signing and providing that in a form that that community is able to understand. It's also done in Spanish and Haitian Creole, as I mentioned previously.
But since the COVID, sometimes the mayor gives his press conferences even from his home. And that's just, they've set his house up to where he's got everything. And he's centrally located close into the city. Now, this new mayor lives way down South Bay. It'll be challenging to see how they're able to replicate that duplicity for her. Because his house was connected into the hard ring that we talk about with the county for the internet. I don't know that's actually a hard wire that goes to the NAP. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with the mayor. There'll be some other type of redundancy, but she's going to have that too.
So I think we already walked through the EOC floor, the press room where we're at right now. I know some people will probably have to step out from the meeting, but we want to go back to those questions that we were unable to answer earlier. So let me see, looking through the chat here. So what kind of building hardening are the walls, floors, and roof made of on the EOC floor? And what level of hardening do we have?
The building here is a category 3. Even during Irma, part of the roof lifted a little bit and they got water in, and that's one of the reasons that pushed us to leave this building and get to another building, get to a category 5 building. As we all know, the storms are getting more frequent. I mean, we went to the Greek alphabet. I don't know what was going to be next, but the storms are stronger. They're more frequent. They can hover. Look at what was it? Dorian. Which one hung over the?
Oh, Dorian.
Dorian? Was it Dorian?
Yeah.
Was it Dorian that hung over the Bahamas?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for 5 days, they took a beating with a category 5 storm. This would not withstand that. We need to move on.
But the windows, we do have mesh on the windows, and that's supposed to,
And that's being
obviously,
upgraded again.
yeah, that's and that's to to prevent any obviously debris from coming in. I think if we hit the windows, once we do go on lockdown, we do have shutters that go down in the entrances, and as well as an atrium area that is kind of exposing the middle part of the building. They did make some repairs to the roof, but as Frank said, there are some challenges with
And that's the roof covering. The roof structure of this is bar joist, which is not twin T's. So the lift, as I'm sure you all can relate to, is a paramount concern with a huge storm that the lift can actually pull those twin T's up. So, like I say, I mean the bar joist can pull those loose. So in the new facility, it'll be, like I say, it'll be a Cat 5 with a twin T concrete roof.
You also might want to, we want to emphasize too that the EOC is
it's in the envelope. It's in a
Right.
Yes. So
we're in interior walls inside the outer walls, but even so, if we were to take a huge hit, this is not
and then
could be an issue for us.
how the I don't know if you guys know the answer to this. How elevated is our building?
Doral in itself, believe it or not, is in a major floodplain area. During Irma, there was concern that if the water were to breach the canals because of the amount of rain that went on for a day and a half, we came very close to flooding this area itself.
But the building itself, it's elevated.
The building was built in '79. It is not to the FEMA floodplain where the new construction is required. But there are, when you ride through Doral and you're like on 41st Street and you're on the main drags, you will see that they require these retention ponds that are behind the sidewalks that dip down and then go up before it goes to the hard surface parking in these different facilities. And in front of our building, we have huge retention ponds that are in the open grass area here also.
So it's sort of like when we, I think it was in 2013, when the new storm surge planning zones were developed based on the evacuation study. We provided information to several of our partners, but we also told them to take a deeper look at where they were and any possible effects that they would have to ponding or flooding within the area. Because you yourself and your building might be elevated, but if the area floods, around you floods, then access in and out of your facility is hampered. So I mean, we're here during the Norman storm in, I want to say 2000, I could tell you that the water level in the grass in prior to this, before the statue that's in the front there, it was like a river.
Yeah.
It looked like a pond. 36th Street, as Frank mentioned, 41st Street, tons of cars from 87th Avenue to the Palmetto were stranded. We actually had to implement a plan in place to get those vehicles towed because the water there just ponded and stayed there for a while, and cars were stalled out there and that sort of thing. So one of the things that individuals need to look at is not just their elevation level there, but they need to look at the surrounding areas and any possible impacts that they may have to being stranded or being in a moat type situation where people can't get to you or you can't get out.
Right. I mean, we're seeing it happening in Brickell. You look at the last the storm with Irma, how flooded that was for days in the Brickell area. And these developments that take place are sometimes looked at on an individual basis with traffic studies and with flooding and that type of thing, instead of looking at the global impact of all these buildings. And so what happens is it's left to the county or to the city to manage this water that is that accumulates, and there's no plan in place that requires, other than the elevation of your particular place or your parking and your finished floor level, with 1 foot above whatever FEMA is or whatever the local codes or the Florida building code now requires. So every building attacks their things individually. And then some of the infrastructure issues are left to the city or the county to manage. And without the pumps, and you can see pumps are now being installed in Miami Beach to try to, mitigate the flooding concerns that we have. And there's also a study that's ongoing now with the Back Bay study with the wall, right? The wall to run along Biscayne Boulevard, where they're going to have an elevated wall that they're looking at. They're talking about billions of dollars and obtaining properties and that type of thing to do that. But it's
and there's also the evacuation study that's ongoing
right.
with the I can't think of that name right now.
The state?
No,
the one that we're doing now, the evacuation.
Oh, the clearance time?
Yeah, but the what's that organization that's also doing it? I can't think of it right now.
Oh, the Planning Council?
Yes.
The South Florida
The
Planning
South
Council?
Florida
Yeah.
Planning Council, which are a big partner in that evacuation study, to update it, and then we're going to have to re-examine and look at our surge planning zones to see if there's any changes that need to be made as a result of that study.
And we're doing the study now in evacuation time,
Yeah.
right?
And the timing
So
study is
that's
also
going on right now. And that tells us when we get those updated figures, I mean, we have figures we're working off now, but that tells us how far ahead of the storm, depending on what the surge is and that type of thing, that we need to start to tell people to get out of these different zones. And of course, it's a beautiful blue sky day and nobody wants to go. And then at the last moment, when the clouds come and they say, oh, this thing's really coming, and everybody decides to get out, and that's where you get everybody jammed on the road. And it's the two most difficult places to evacuate in the United States is South Florida and New Orleans. Those are the two areas that give us the biggest headache. New Orleans, you got to go east and west, and you got a lot of water you have to deal with to get out. And here we got to go north. And so we try to tell people you don't necessarily have to travel out of Florida to get out of the evacuation zone. Just move over, go a little further west, get out of your zone. But people, when you say evacuate, they think I got to get in my car and I got to get on the turnpike. And that's another one of our challenges we have, how we handle those messages when they go out. And the other concern we have because of COVID is that when we tell people to leave these zones because of the storm surge that is anticipated, that they won't come, that they'll stay. And they'll tell you things like, oh, I have impact windows and I don't, I put on a metal roof and I this and that. Those windows are rated for wind, not rated for tons of water coming down on them. And so most of the life loss in these storms is due to water, not to wind. And that's why we say, run from water, hide from wind. But with the COVID, we've been telling people to stay away from each other for a year now. And then the storm comes and we say, well, you know what? Now you got to come to us and get together close inside a building. And our fear is that they won't come and they'll stay where they are. And they will suffer the consequences of that.
So then we have time for one more question.
Multiple choice?
So regarding the new facility that we've talked about, what is the most significant improvement plan when compared to the current one? Are we seeking LEED, WELL, or any other certification?
Right, it'll be a LEED. The facility there right now is a LEED building. I think it's a silver. I'm not sure. I think it's a silver, but I know it has a LEED designation. The county's part of their operations is that the buildings will be LEED certified that they build. And I think the two main elements we're looking for is the window, the envelope to be a category 5 envelope. So we've got that safety involved, and space, area, so that we can really operate properly.
And we also will have some of our public safety partners and other
Oh, yeah.
partners close by. I don't know if the National Hurricane Center still.
We're talking with
We're talking with them, and they possibly might be co-locating. But that is also
We're working on that to bring the National Weather Service and the Hurricane Center with us. They haven't committed, but we are providing the space at this point. Their timelines through their GSA with the federal government is like 5 years out. So they're not wanting to make any commitment, but they have told us things space-wise that they need, special considerations. Not saying we're coming, but if we were to come, we would want these things. So we are incorporating those into the new building too.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Elizabeth, did you have any final words?
Yes, I just want to thank again the Miami-Dade Emergency Management Office, Director Frank and Nixsa and Yahiritsa for your time and giving us this tour that was very interesting, and we answered all the questions. I think a lot of the attendees have several very interesting questions, and we learn a lot about how the emergency management operates and keep us safe when we have any emergencies. So thank you so much again. And I apologize for the technical difficulties and the rocking beginning, but I think we're able to come up with a good program at the end. And I think that's all we have for now. And I apologize if we have any questions that have not been answered due to the time, but we end up stretching the tour a little bit longer than originally anticipated. So thanks a lot to everybody, and hope to see you again in future programs.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to everybody at the Emergency Management Center. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.